Thank you so much for staying tuned to this frequency. Welcome to Africa Discourse. I am Wilson Marshall. Today is all about the coronavirus and the scare of a second wave. The World Health Organization are talking about easing of lockdown globally may give rise to a second wave that will be so difficult for humanity to wake up from. But still, according to top governments in the world, they are beginning to reopen the economy, reopen their way of life, despite the fact that the scourge of coronavirus pandemic is increasing. Yes, 6 million and counting. That is a number right now when we talk about the global pandemic. And of course, we've got some recoveries. Yeah, going towards 3 million recovered. And of course, hundreds of deaths. Now, when you come straight down to Africa, some total in Africa, we have 146,794. That is the sum total. When you compare Africa infectious rate to some countries globally, you'd be like, wow, is it the same virus we're talking about? What about the number of deaths in Africa? 4,223. For the recovery cases in Africa, we have 61,773. Moving down to Nigeria, our own country, total case of infection 10,162. For the number of deaths, 287. Recoveries, 3,007. For active cases, 6,868. And Africa is talking about reopening the economy. If you go to Egypt, they're beginning to reopen gradually. Go to Morocco, they're beginning to reopen gradually. In Nigeria, the case is not different. Ghana, almost up and doing. But in South Africa, a very vibrant voice in South Africa, Melama, says, look, if you go to church, it's a trap. You may die. Yeah, that was his statement. So that we'll follow the rules and regulations governing COVID-19, the fight against COVID-19. With me here in the studio to really talk about this, I have a clergyman and, of course, a human rights activist, a political analyst. Join me to welcome Reverend Humphrey Arega. Reverend, welcome to Africa Discourse.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate your coming.
Welcome, viewers.
All right.
My
So
pleasure.
here we are. The world is beginning to reopen and Africa is following suit. How do you feel about the fear voiced by the WHO saying the way the world is going, we may have a second wave, and that will be so devastating, we'll find it difficult to get out from it. Taking a look at it from African perspective, knowing fully well that right now, total number of infections in Africa is just in its hundreds.
Well, thank you very much for having me. First of all, I want to say that one of the biggest problems that man faces is fear. And fear causes most of the deaths that we see across all illnesses, and even the doctor will tell you that to recover, you need a free heart, you need a free mind, you need to have the air of safety within you for there to be a recovery. So COVID-19 is not exceptional in the things that have happened. But my problem over the period is that human beings don't seem to learn from one mistake to another. Everything that happens ought to give us an understanding of trying to reassert ourselves and say, if such a thing happens next time, how do we avert it? What do we do? First of all, look at the parity between the developed world and the African context. I make bold to say that situations, circumstances, seasons, and times affect individuals differently. The Western world will tell you in time of winter, there's more pandemics, there's more devastation for floods and other that affects the people because the immune system is a little bit weak during the winter season. But when it comes to spring, when it comes to summer, there is much more easy times. You know, the African context is more of summer and what we might call winter, that's rainy season, and the things and the like. You see that God also is in no wisdom distributed differently according to the period, the environments, the things that needs to be. And I was looking at things and I felt one of the things that have happened is that the COVID-19 is becoming to make Africa an isolated environment from people. Africa is built on relationship. It's built on interaction. And I'm also aware that when you have a sick person around you and you have people comforting the person, the rate of recovery is more. But here we are told that we should isolate. And isolation is doing a devastation, even in the Western world. You find families are beginning to query, why can't we be close to our family friend or family member who is sick, and to be asked out of the matter, we don't know what happens to it. So I believe that we begin to treat symptoms with lack of understanding. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of thought. We seem to be copying whatever the Americans or the Europeans does. The African wants to do it. And we don't have the same situations, as far as I'm concerned. Our immune system, our life system is very different. So when you need to have a homegrown solution to a homegrown problem. We might say, oh, the pandemic is worldwide. It's not an African problem, but we're in an African soil, and we treat things, and God has been so kind to us. The herbs, the fields around us are very potent. They are undiluted. They have not been tampered with, and so the efficacy is much more. And we're talking about the fact that they use herbal drugs, and they got quicker results than those who went for medical problems, and most of them dying. So we can begin to look at that. I think the African is set on the pedestal that, because God also knows that we don't have the capacity for Western or medical things.
So you're bringing in divinity into this whole matter?
Yes, because you need to situate it in the situation where you are. If we have the real pandemic like we have in Italy or we have in America, half of Africa will be wiped out. Ordinary flood have wiped out the whole community because we don't have what it takes to mitigate it. Not because we cannot, but we have decided not to, because the solutions are within us, And two, our behavior also has a problem. The African, look at the issue. In Western environment, they tell you most of those who have received this COVID-19 and know in a more devastating manner are those who live in slums, those who live in places where you don't have facilities to cope. And that's what the African situation is. We don't have the facility to cope. Just that we have, for them, they may not have the environment. We have the natural environment. We have a lot of trees, we have a lot of habitats that helps us to filter the air we breathe, and that helps us. The sun, that helps us to mitigate some things, which the Western world may not have in full. So we need to look at this, and because of that, I'm sure, I keep saying that God is just the only survivor that we have. If not, the Africa we saw yesterday or today may not be the one we're going to see tomorrow.
All right, now if you take a look at statistics, globally speaking, it's just going higher. Brazil right now is fourth because of what happened, the outbreak of the pandemic in large gun or in large format. Come to Africa, it's like the figure is just gradually rising, and the WHO blamed it on inadequate testing facility or test kit. And now many African countries, they really want to reopen. If you take a look at the rules and regulations put on the ground to fight COVID-19, if we should come together, reopen the economy, and go back to our normal way of life, like you talked about, the friendship and all that, do you think that this fear of a second wave propounded by the World Health Organization will eventually come true?
Well, like I also said, fear is the potent weapon for the destruction of man. And so long as we always propagate fear and let the heart begin to beat and pound, we will have a problem. You see, I'm a pastor, so I will not take excuse for quoting scriptures. Job said, what I feared most has come upon me. Most of the things that happen to us are the things we are afraid of. And in most cases, they don't even happen. Fear just took over. And when you have fear, you don't have the ability to situate yourself and reason how and why things should happen. You just move by reason of emotions and so on. And that creates a great fear. Two is the fact that we also do not have this understanding within ourselves that you need to take precautions. Even in the Bible, in the Old Testament, when you are coming in, you wash your hands and wash your feet before you enter. Because you have carried a lot of things. And it is only natural to ease yourself of the things. And that's what we have made us to do. Wash your hands, sanitize it. If you are in a crowded place, close your mouth and your nose. Because these things are bacteria that you don't see, but they're around. So you need to prevent yourself. I don't have a problem with that. In situations, when situations happen, you suspend some things. It is obvious that we are going to suspend very close relationships, because the more you grip yourself, the more you breathe into yourself, the more things happen. And you don't know who carries it. That's the point. So in order to prevent it, you have preventive measures. For a period, let's look at it. When the other pandemic came, Ebola came, we also had the same thing. Clean your hands, separate. It gone. We came back to ourselves. So let us not be always thinking that, why must I? When somebody says do something, why must I do it? Yes. They don't even need to give you reason why you should do it. The point is, do it for your own safety. You may not have it, but if you come in contact with somebody who have it, you are going to have it. So you need to prevent yourself. But to me, I also believe that in most cases, the government, I keep saying, the government of the world, I'm not even confident to believe them when they say some things, because over the period, they have not seen reason why they should believe. But even when they are speaking the truth, we no longer think whether it is true. We talk about Africa, for instance. The WHO has said, World WHO, that Africans don't even have the basic testing kits to determine who has it. So how are the figures coming out? So that's why people are propounding the theory that figures are coming out, because the more figures you have, the more who or every other person will donate to you. And that cannot be far from the truth. You talk about hospitals or environments where you can rescue yourself. What has happened to our hospitals since the pandemic happened? How many hospitals have been renovated? How many facilities have we had upgraded? That's what we're talking about. So it's not that you have one hospital in Abuja, you have one hospital in Lagos. You have a hospital in Lagos for over 10+ million people. You have one hospital for over 20 million people. How does it work? It doesn't work. When every ward should have a standard health center. Two, but we're also seeing that whether in the Western country or not, most rate of survival happens in the home. Those who stay at home, they survive more than those who went to the hospital. That shows to you, I keep saying, that shows to you the social relationship. There is somebody, when you come, there's somebody to attend to you. When there's somebody to attend to you, And these are things. But when you go into an isolation, nobody attends to you regularly. And you see, when you isolate somebody, the mindset is imprisonment, because you have restricted freedom of movement. And once you don't have ventilation, good air coming in and coming out, the rate of survival is less than when you have a free air. You can be able to move around within your environment, your compound. So I believe that we will need to begin to tell ourselves that there are certain precautions we must take. Let us live in an environment that is healthy. We are talking about now how many cities or states have been disinfected in a way and manner that is right. I'm not talking about when you are pumping one street with one bucket. I think you are fumigating the place. No, you can see some cities, they use vehicles that spray the whole environment and give you that brings confidence. Even if something has not happened, but because you see that something is being done to mitigate it, there's confidence that it will not come. Unlike in Africa, we don't have it. And that's why we need to. The only place we saw it was Ghana, a little bit of Senegal. Today, those are the two countries that have good results.
And of course, Nigeria, some streets also you're going to see them fumigating streets and marketplaces in cities in Nigeria.
Let's be very frank to ourselves.
Yeah.
I saw some of them fumigating with those kind of rubber at the back that people used to fumigate feeds in their compound. That's not, you ask myself, how many kilometers can that go? What effect does it have? Okay. Our drainages are very poor. We don't have good drainages in Africa. So until we begin to do things right, we'll begin to, and I say, thank God that we have not had the pandemic that the Western world have, who talk of advancement. To me, it just God's mercy that we are not hit with the kind of wave that may mean extinction of humanity in Africa. If not, we're just going.
All right, now there's this ease of lockdown, of course, religious organizations, religious centers, worship centers that are beginning to come together. reopening, so to speak, fellowshipping together. And if you take a look at the rules and regulations, though they say they're going to follow the rules and regulations governing the fight against COVID-19, some persons have the opinion that in Africa it's so difficult for us to follow those regulations, like what you said, this conviviality. You want to come together, brotherly, sisterly love, and that also negates the rules and regulations put on the ground to fight against the coronavirus. Do you think that World Health Organization, they are right in having this fear?
Well, there's always some element of truth in every statement or situation. And I believe that not everybody will do the right thing. This is natural human being. Every human being, by nature, is averse to rules and regulations. And that's why God made it possible to have firm situations to regulate men even if they don't want to. We need to. For social distancing, like I said, there is a pandemic. And everybody recognizes it, that it's there. I'm not going to wish it away. Yeah. It's there. How do you mitigate it? It's giving your social distance and giving yourself protection. Before they say prevention is better than cure. Some of those things. So first of all, we have to leave the issue of denial, like what is happening in Brazil. And they deny, the president denied it ever existed.
And that is where Africa is now turning towards.
Yes, you see.
Because of the doubts you raised that the figures are not even in consonant with what you're saying, thereby bringing data. And once that comes into play, nobody wants to follow rules and regulations anymore.
Yes, but even if you say there's a doubt, but you have to ask yourself, do I need to expose myself to this? It's a question. They're not asking you to prevent somebody else now. They're saying prevent yourself from having it. So you have to ask yourself, do I need to prevent myself from having it by doing these things, or do I not? Why did God make laws? Why do nations make laws? They make laws for this good and well-being of the society. Yeah. Because man by his nature do not want laws. But if two men without laws come together, there is death. You know, these are some of the things. So we need to ask us, these are questions. The church, for instance, we say, do the social distance. We had our service yesterday. 20, as big as the auditorium was only 20%. We scattered it. We still enjoyed our service. Even those who were watching by the other side of it, the other side. What is service anyway? It is not just to come, it is to come and have fellowship with God. God didn't say you should come to fellowship and have a problem. That's why I said, when you're going into the temple in Jewish time, you wash your feet and you wash your hands to prevent things you may not know. And we are saying there is something happening. To prevent it, do this. You're not just saying for life, it's not forever. You know, you will still come back to that fellowship sometime when things go down. But for this period, in order not to make it very devastating, because it is better for you to stay alive than to be social and dead. Because when you're dead, you're not going to talk to anybody. That's some of the things. So I believe that the church, the mosque, the places should adhere to rules and regulations made by government.
But would they do it? Because now you spoke of your own church. Because right now, if one or two persons or two churches or mosques flout this rule, it's going to have a kind of a domino effect in the society.
No, you see, the point, if a church, for instance, refuses to adhere to rules, then you have to ask yourself, what is it a church for? The church is the epitome of obedience. You know, they have not said, you see, I keep saying, people say, oh, they close church. Nobody closed church. They closed the building.
The building.
The building is not the church. The building, the church is the individual. My home is a church because I live in it. The home is a church. We fellowship together. If your family gather together to pray, God will hear you. Although we need to gather in a place to strengthen one another, because not every one of us will have that. But if they not give you opportunities so that 20 people gather but spaced out, why don't you take it? You hold services in sessions. You know, some churches hold 5 services. It's not a big deal. The thing is that you are able to see your members happy, and they're able to see one another, and they pray. So a time will come, we'll come back together again. We should not just say, no, we are going to hold service, because we have seen some situations where people hold services, and the infection rate increased. Are you going to tell me that is God? That's not God. Disobedience is not a part of God's life.
All right.
You know? But we should also understand that the things we do, because, as I said, the Bible says that government is ordained by God.
By God.
To uphold justice and to discipline iniquity.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things. So if we believe that God or government is ordained by God, and government says do this, so long as they have not said don't talk about God, then I don't have much of a problem.
All right. All right. Now, other aspects also of the fear of the WHO about Africa, because others are beginning to reopen the economy, talking about schools. You know, U.S., one top official already given the go-ahead that, yes, schools can be reopened if they can follow the rules and regulations governing the fight against COVID-19. Like what you said earlier on, that Africa, we are used to copying. Now, if schools in other climes choose to reopen and Africa wants to do the same, I don't think that may lead to the possibility of a second wave in the continent.
Well,
because they're talking about reopening of schools right now.
Yes, you see, every action have a negative and positive side of it.
Yeah.
It depends on how you have. The European countries, for instance, or America, their school system and environment is very different from ours. First of all, even in their classroom spacing, they don't have crowds like we have. But now they have even reduced it. Two, there is mitigation processes. If you come into a school, you are fumigated. A lot of things are done. They give you the kits that enables you to stay alive. South Africa have that. Right. Even the schools we have, some of them are not habitable. For all intents and purposes, you go to UNIB and see. That's an institute, that's a high institution. I don't want to talk about primary or secondary. Go to UNIB and see the kind of life and space that students live in. Why would there not be diseases over there? You're talking about COVID-19. Nobody has talked about rashes. Nobody has talked about malaria and all of them. That is ravaging people in Africa. We're talking about one that is transported, but the one that we have living with us, people tend to forget about it. But yet they kill more people on a regular basis than this one we're talking about. So if you want to resume school, you have to ask yourself, do you have the environment? When you have 50 students in a class, have you built more schools for spaces for them to stay? When we don't have running waters in some schools, have you not brought water to the place for them to wash their hands? Do you have sanitizers for the students? Do you have face masks for the students? Because most of the students, their parents may not be able to afford it. So is that some of the things? If you don't have, please don't put them on harm's way.
So you're advocating that the schools should be shut down for now in Africa?
No, the schools, if the government is not prepared for them to come in, they shouldn't come in. They shouldn't, because coming into school and dying have no value to the parents to keep them alive. But we are saying, keep the students in a safe place. Make sure that everything that is needed for a good environment. Go and look at some of the schools, their wheels are overgrown. Is there any evidence of governments doing something about this before you talk about resume? It's not just resume. We even talk about, I think they're talking about now, because a lot of parents are talking about the fact that they couldn't do electronic transmission of lectures because some students don't even have light. Some students don't have money to buy data. So we have this problem. Whereas in Europe and abroad, you have schools giving their students data, free data to hook up to lectures. We don't have it.
Now, from all you've said in the education sector, is Africa really ripe to ease lockdown because others are doing it?
You see, right?
because you're right. The people are talking about population per class, talking about standard sitting procedure, talking about crowd control. That Africa don't have it, and this is what WHO is saying, and they're raising alarm, saying, look, this still may lead to a second wave if we are not careful as a continent.
Yes, you see, if you ask me the question whether they are ready, Africa has never been ready for anything, because they don't seem to be thinking about the life of the citizens rather than thinking about their own lives as leaders for them to. Most of the presidents have for hospital facilities in their home. Their students, most of them they have home school built in their presidential palaces and others. So they really will not feel. Most of those who are politicians do not have their students here. Most of them are studying abroad. So you have to ask yourself the question. That's why they are not really concerned the way that people should be concerned about things. You know what I'm saying? But you see, you cannot keep it down because there is no evidence that they are doing something to mitigate it. So you are not sure. Also, okay, they are doing something, let's give them time. They are not doing anything. So you can't frustrate a student now who is almost graduating and he doesn't know when he's going to resume to graduate. They will talk about life. So as far as he's concerned, you should let him graduate. But when the environment for you to graduate is not there, what do? So the politicians in Africa should be thinking of the welfare. It's not because they don't have the resources to do it. I keep saying that Africa has resources to do everything that needs to be done, but they're not doing it. How many schools, for instance, have medical officers as their staff to attend to these students when they come to school? We're talking of kids to be able to test.
Yeah.
Do you have it? You don't. When the students come in the morning, they overwhelm the few teachers that are there. So even if you are talking of using a infrared to look at, how many are you going to look at? Okay, when you have an infrared something, and they say the temperature is high.
All right.
Do you have the medical equipment to evacuate them?
Okay, Reverend, our time is up. You know, this is an abridged version, and you're going to use a minute to give your last line on this discussion because the fear is still there. But somehow, somewhere, Africa has been able to break all records of prediction of the WHO about Africa. I want to talk about COVID-19. 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I want to say that Africa is not in WHO's hands, in God's hands.
Okay.
And so long as we continue to believe God,
all right,
God can do the impossible for us.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Well, you've heard him. Let's just keep watching and praying because right now it's like divinity is the ultimate. Bye for now. It's true. This is ITV, certainly the best.